to another live stream. This is Tassif here, and I have a special guest with me, Stephanie Soucek. Stephanie, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you for being here, Stephanie. Um, so what we usually do, I'll wait for maybe a minute and let people join because I think it takes a minute for people to get the notifications as they
Sure.
come in. But it seems like we have Terry Dunlap formerly from Greene County. Now she lives in South Dakota, a conservative friend of
Oh,
ours.
okay.
So
Hi, Terry.
Terry writes, "Good evening, everyone." Okay, well, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. I know we have some very important things that we're going to be discussing today, and I appreciate your willingness
Sure.
to be a part of this live stream. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to go ahead and do a brief introduction, and then we'll go right into the questions, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So for everyone who's joining, thank you for being here. Stephanie Soucek, who's our special guest today, is a stay-at-home mom who resides with her family in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. And for all the people who are watching this who have never been to Wisconsin, when you visit Wisconsin, you have to go to Door County and you have to check out Egg Harbor and Sturgeon Bay and the entire county.
And Sister Bay,
It's
and yeah,
it
just go up the whole county.
it is so beautiful.
It is.
And so Stephanie is currently the vice chair of Wisconsin's 8th Congressional District,
Mhm.
and that's from the Republican Party of Wisconsin, and also the chair of Door County Republican Party. And you are also a columnist for Wisconsin Right Now.
Yes.
All right. So Stephanie is very passionate about fighting for American values and our constitutional rights. And she got involved in politics as a volunteer in 2012 out of concern for our state and nation. So, Stephanie, thank you once again for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have a great discussion.
All right. So, Stephanie, we're going to go right into the questions. Now, obviously, I gave a brief introduction, but tell us more about yourself and, share some details about how you got involved in Wisconsin politics.
Sure. So it's honestly something I never had really wanted. It's not something that I desired to do initially because
Hmm.
politics always kind of turned me off. Because I am a peacemaker at heart. And
Hmm.
so just all of the divisiveness and the contentiousness kind of turned me off.
Yeah.
However, I'm also very passionate about what I believe. And I do believe in speaking out and standing up for what's right and fighting for those things you believe in. So it was 2012, and uh, between the presidential race and Barack Obama running for reelection, and
Hmm.
then it was when Scott Walker was being with the recall effort. He was being recalled, or they were trying to recall him. I remember just being really like stirred up, and I just was restless about it. Like I thought, I feel like I have to do something, and
Hmm.
so I didn't know what to do. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to see if my local party. I'm assuming there's a Republican Party locally, so I looked into it, and I went to my first Lincoln Day dinner. That was my first, step in the process of getting involved, and didn't know anybody, didn't know
Hmm.
anything. I was very clueless, so I just kind of jumped right in and was a little scared and intimidated. But it's just been really cool to see, uh, the doors that have opened and just where it's taken me. So just fast forward. I've worked, or I'd rather volunteered for several campaigns as their county coordinator. Ron Johnson, Scott Walker, Mike Gallagher.
Hmm.
Um, and then in 2019 is when, or at the end of 2018, I was looking for someone to replace our former county chairman, Bill Berglund, because he was going to be stepping down. And I couldn't find anybody who wanted the job. And so I was like, okay, now what? Because I was on a committee to find someone. So I had a few people reach out saying, I think you should do it. And I literally, like, that was the last thing on my mind. I did not want to be chairman. That was intimidating to me. And I know all that goes with that, the hard work, the drama. But I decided to take a leap, and I'm still the chairman today. Um, uh, this is my third term, second year of my third term.
Okay.
And then last year, I became the vice chair of the 8th district,
Hmm.
which again, honestly, I literally had no plans or thoughts about doing that. But it was shortly before uh, I think it was near the end of 2022, it would have been. And I knew that Bill Berglund was the former Door County chair, was also the vice chair of our district, and I knew he was, getting to the point where he's wanting to probably step back, but I didn't know what his decision was going to be.
Okay.
And I thought, well, if he's going to step down, maybe that's something I could, help in leadership
Hmm.
with and be part of the state party and make a difference that way. So again, it was just like, okay, here we go. And so I got elected to that position, and there's a lot going on right now, as I'm sure you know, that we need to be um, focusing on, and a lot of work to do. So I'm
Exactly.
just,
Hmm.
looking forward to working with everybody to save Wisconsin and America.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned Lincoln Day dinner for
Yes.
those who may not be aware, because I know I have lots of viewers who tune in from other states.
Sure.
Lincoln Day dinner is really in a county party, in a county Republican party. It's the flagship event of the year, right? It's
Yeah,
the
it's
main.
like the annual like big dinner that just about every most, if not all, county parties do every year, and it kind of depends. I mean, some of them do that early in the year, some do a little
Hmm.
later. They kind of stagger it so that they're at different times throughout the year, and because of course sometimes you want to have certain candidates or people
Yeah.
go that you want to make sure everybody can get to all the dinners. So that's like our biggest event of the year. And
Hmm.
Toss, if you were just there speaking on immigration, and you did a great job, so it was great to have you. So you were the keynote speaker, and I heard good things afterwards. So everybody seemed to enjoy your speech and your talk. So
Thank you so much, and I enjoyed being there. I really appreciated the invitation.
sure.
And you obviously you started your involvement began with a Lincoln Day dinner, as you
Yep.
mentioned, and now you're organizing Lincoln Day dinners,
Yes.
and you did a fabulous job. I mean, it was such a wonderful
Wow.
event. And
Thank you. I appreciate that.
you had three congressional candidates
Yes.
at your Lincoln Day, which is a big highlight too.
Yes.
And I enjoyed speaking about immigration and meeting great people in your county. So
Yes. It was great.
thank you for that. And so I think, I was going to ask you about how you got involved with the 8th Congressional District and Door County. So I think you already answered that.
Sure.
Um, Tell us what it's like to be on the executive board of a state Republican Party, and not just any state, it's a battleground state. So share with us a little bit about your experience and how time consuming it is, and how busy does that role keep you?
Sure. So I mean, it definitely keeps me busy
Hmm.
because so I knew ahead of time there were four like in-person quarterly meetings where we like conduct our business and make
Hmm.
decisions and discuss all the things that are going on and what we need to do. And so there's four meetings that are in different parts of the state. They do try to make them somewhat central because it's people from all over the state. That one of
Hmm.
the misconceptions I think about the state party is that it's all in Madison, but there's
No.
a vice chair and a chair of each district of our 8
Right.
districts that are part of that board. And then even some of the other people that are elected to that board
Hmm.
are not from Madison. So it's all spread out. So we do those meetings, and then we also have certain, I guess you'd say, calls or updates throughout the year that are just like a Zoom call. And, always discussing, what we need to be doing, and just different issues that come up. And then I'm on three committees. So the committees meet from time to time, or just, phone calls. So
Hmm.
I'm on the party development committee, the budget committee, and there's one other one. It's like the public relations committee.
Okay. Well, all
So
important committees, I can tell.
yeah, yeah. So I'm not the head of any of those, but involved in those. So yeah, I mean, it definitely keeps me busy, and it's kind of in some ways it goes hand in hand with being a county chair, but it's a different role. And
Right.
I think me being a county chair and having been a county chair gives me a good perspective and a unique perspective to be on the board. So just
Yeah.
like trying to be a voice for the grassroots. And I think I would say the board is actually quite diverse in thought. I think there's a lot of good, passionate people on the board, but
Mhm.
we're debating things, we don't always agree, and so I always encourage us to let's make sure we're unified while we're debating these issues.
Right.
I mean, we come out unified in the end,
Right.
and so yeah, it's been interesting. I've enjoyed it, and it's just been a really unique experience that I've
Yeah.
learned a lot from so far.
And I'm guessing the meetings. So you mentioned that it's not centralized, as you know. I think it's important for people to know it's not
Mhm.
all Madison. It's you have
Right.
leaders from across the state. Are the
Yep.
meetings also rotated to different areas?
Yeah. So they have. So for example, I think 2023. They had one in La Crosse.
Okay.
Then we've had one in, and that was before I was on the board. But then they have one in Milwaukee, in
Hmm.
Stevens Point, in Appleton, I think, before the state convention,
Uh,
and I think maybe the Dells at one point. Um, yeah, I'm trying to remember, but so yeah, they do try to spread it out and go to different locations and try to because like I said, everybody's from different parts of the state. So
right.
so yeah, it's just I think some people think like, oh, RPW is all Madison, and they just kind of align that with like they think Madison is like where, uh, all the establishment is, but I mean, we're not, I kind of joke, like, we're not in a smoke filled room making decisions behind, where we're like being all, you know,
Yeah.
um, trying to do anything nefarious. We're debating stuff and we're disagreeing at times and we, have to make decisions. And
Hmm.
um, so I really feel very appreciative and humbled to be a part of that process.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. And I think it's important for people to understand that because there's always that question about, grassroots versus
Hmm.
establishment. But no, I mean, everyone has input, everyone has a say in the process.
Right,
And so you've got the county parties that are very active, all over the state, and then you've got a state convention and other events throughout the year that take place. Candidates do different events, fundraisers, and other grassroots rallies. So I think for people who are conservatives or even independent voters leaning conservatives, or just anyone in general thinking about what's happening in politics and paying attention, it's important for them to understand that it's not just all establishment, as
right.
people often seem to think.
Yeah,
People from all over the state have an input in how the policies of the party are everything's taking
right.
place.
And it's
Yeah.
also when just to make the point that, so for example, the chair and the vice chair of the district do get elected at their district caucuses by the
Hmm.
county party, by the
Exactly.
delegates within the county party.
Exactly.
So it's, if you're involved in the party, you want your voice to be heard. There's a way to do that. There's a process. And so, and you know what, like for me personally, I don't always agree with everybody in different positions of leadership.
Hmm.
I do try to be a good listener. I try to hear people out, and if I disagree, I still want them to know, like, hey, I'll give you a chance to make your case, and I'll try to be open minded about what your point of view is. So I do think it's important if you're in a leadership position to be a good listener. And
Absolutely.
yeah, again, I'm gonna if something is a really like if it's a deep conviction, I'm going to stand by that, but I also don't think I know everything. So, so I think it's good to be like, have your convictions, but be humble and admit, like, you know what, maybe somebody else has a good idea that I could learn
Absolutely.
from. So,
Yeah, and I always say on this channel in many of my other videos that you know it's important to have dialogue, to share
mhm,
information, and to continuously learn from each other. So
absolutely.
that's very important. So thank you for sharing that, Stephanie. And so we're going to talk about Door County and the 8th Congressional District in particular. So I think let's start with where Wisconsin stands nationally. We know that all eyes are on Wisconsin as we head towards the 2024 election. And so as we look at the electoral map of Wisconsin, tell us what makes Door County special. Why should voters pay attention to Door County on election night?
Sure. So, what's interesting is we are a bellwether county, and we have been for many decades. So, I think the last time an election was um, not so basically a bellwether county is an indicator of who's going to win the presidential election. So
Right,
if our county wins, whoever wins, I'm sorry, if Trump wins Door County, that would likely be an indicator that he's going to win the presidency. If he doesn't, then it could indicate the opposite, which is what we don't want.
right,
So for whatever reason, since I think 96 since 1996, Door County has chosen whoever ends up becoming president. And so because I'm like, okay, I remember actually finding out when Ron Johnson was doing fairly well. When I found out he won Indoor County, I was kind of like relieved, even though I didn't know
yeah,
for sure if he was
right.
officially. So yeah, so I definitely have my eye on Door County election night, not for just
Okay,
our county's sake, but for the country's sake.
yeah, yeah. So, on a map, obviously people can go online and find Door County, but just tell my out of state viewers where Door County is.
So this is Wisconsin. Actually, I did
Right,
this to President when I met President Trump briefly. I told him that I live in Door County, which is the peninsula. It's on the thumb of Wisconsin if you
right.
put your hand up like this. So we're we're known as the I would say we're known as the Cape Cod of the Midwest. And
Okay,
so I'm kind of, proud of that. And
yeah.
yeah, I've lived here most of my life. So I'm I I'm thankful that I get to live here and just be kind of just a really pivotal. I
Hmm.
mean, just there's just a lot of folk. I mean, I'll get contacted from national publications, to do interviews because Door County is they're interested in Door County. So and what's going on here. So it's pretty cool just how it's been such a focus and along with Wisconsin as well. So
And I'm going to ask you questions about the 8th Congressional District, but before we get to that, um, give us a little bit of, for the out of state viewers, a little bit of an overview of the 8th Congressional District. What counties do you have? What part of the
sure.
state it's in? Just something about 8th Congressional.
Sure. So I would say the district is fairly pretty safely red Republican.
Hmm.
But we've got Green Bay, and Green Bay's the main bigger city.
Right.
I can't say big. I mean, it's smaller compared to Milwaukee, but which the city is more blue.
Hmm.
But Brown County is where Green Bay is, and that's definitely more Republican overall.
Hmm.
We've got, I believe it's 10 counties, but just a little bit of Winnebago, and then we've got Calumet, Outagamie, Wapaka, Oconto, Kewanee, Door, Brown, Marinette. Did I get all of them? I think.
Oh,
um,
that's okay.
yeah, that's close enough. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, we definitely have several more conservative counties in our district, but we're definitely a big media market with the Green Bay market.
absolutely.
We've
Hmm.
got we do have a lot of focus on it's Northeast Wisconsin and the congressional race. I mean, so Mike Gallagher was the congressman before, and if you just look at it from a pure statistical
Hmm.
point of view, he would always get a pretty good percentage of the vote. So 70%, 75. I mean, so he always did pretty well. So I think and for the disagreements people have with him, I get it, but there's big shoes to fill in the sense of, um, I mean, he always was pretty safely. He didn't really have to. It's almost like he didn't have to Um, we didn't have to worry too much about that seat. So I'm not necessarily worried about the seat, but I also don't want to take anything for granted. And
Right.
we've got some new people. We've got so the three. Do you want me to say the congressional
Oh yeah, I
candidates?
was going to ask you, but you can just continue the conversation.
Okay,
Yeah,
sounds
let's
good.
go right into
So
it. Yeah.
sounds good. So Andre Jacques is one of the candidates. He's currently my state senator, actually. So
Hmm.
I know him well just from being my state senator. Um, so he was in the assembly before. Some people, the people who like him a lot are, uh, he's got a pretty strong conservative record overall. People trust
Hmm.
him that he's going to do what he
Hmm.
says.
Hmm.
So he's got that going for him. Then we have Roger Roth, who I believe he was in the assembly before, but then he was a state senator as well. And he actually ran for lieutenant governor in 2022 with Tim Michaels. He won the primary and then was on the ticket with Tim Michaels.
Right.
And a little side story with that, actually, I found out my sister went to college with him because in 2022, I happened to mention my sister's. I mentioned Roger Roth was, running for lieutenant governor. And she goes, "Why does that name ring a bell?" So it turns out she had gone to college with him at Oshkosh, and she remembers him vaguely from when he was there because he was interested in politics at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like my little like personal tie to him that way. And then he does run a construction business as well,
Hmm.
and both Andre and him, they both have many kids. So Roger, I think, has 5 boys. Andre has 7 kids, I think. So they've got big families. And then Tony Weed is the new one, the new guy. He's considered the outsider because he's never been involved in politics before.
Hmm.
I actually know his nephew Henry Weed because Henry was helping out on Rebecca Clayfish's campaign in 2022 for the governor's race. So I met him when he came to my parade in Door County, actually. So I thought, why do I know that name, Tony Weed? Well, it turns out I know his nephew. So I've gotten to know Tony a little bit. So it's, as a county chair, you get to know the different candidates, and I'm just trying to be fair to everybody and give them all equal access to our members and to our county. And so that's just a brief introduction about them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's wonderful. And I know, as I mentioned, you had all three congressional candidates from the Republican side at your Lincoln Day dinner, which
Yep.
was a big highlight.
Yes.
And I know I pay attention to all the different things that they are doing. Each one of those candidates, I
Hmm.
check out their social media
Yep.
posts and everything because
Yeah.
I know. I mean, for anyone who's paying attention, the 8th congressional district, that race is very important.
It is because
Yeah.
the house is so close. We want to add to that in 2024. And thankfully, we did win in Ohio recently. So we added a seat back because that was a special election.
Hmm.
We definitely want to get a little bit more of a comfortable majority
Exactly.
in the house. So we have to win the seat. I'm not, like I said, I'm not like
Exactly.
going to do whatever I can to help once the primary is over. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that whoever wins the general too.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about Door County. I'm going to ask you a question, but before
Okay.
that, I'll present some statistics. And I looked these up on the internet, and from verified sources.
Okay.
So, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Um, in 2016, Donald Trump won 49.3% of the votes in Door County, while Hillary Clinton got 46.1%. So that's 8,584, I think, votes for Trump and 8,026 votes for Clinton. That's 2016. So Trump won. And Trump won, uh, in 2016, he won Door County and he won the state.
Yep.
In 2020, Trump got more votes than he got in 2016 in Door County. So as I
Mm-hmm.
said, 2016, he got 8,584 votes. In 2020, he got 9,752 votes in Door County,
Mm-hmm.
which is 48.6%. But then Biden reportedly got 10,044 votes, which is 50%. And so in 2016, Trump won Door County and he won state of Wisconsin. In 2020, the results were not favorable for Trump. So as we go towards 2024, what's your projection for Door County? You mentioned it's bellwether.
Yes. Um, well, of course, I mean, I believe we've got a good chance to win Door County. Um, but we've got to work really hard because I mean, it is just true that the Democrats they have a lot of out of state money coming in. And so
Mm,
whether it's Wisconsin or Door County, we just have to battle back against all the stuff they're putting out there. They're spending money on a lot of ads and
yeah.
the messaging and all that. So and they spread a lot of misinformation. So
Hmm.
we're having to combat that. But you know what? Ever since the Trump verdict, I've had people who it's interesting because there's people that don't live in this state. I've had people. In fact, I met with a group the other night on Tuesday, who a lot of them live from outside the state year
Hmm.
round, from Texas, from just from other counties, from Florida, I think even, but they live here during the summer, and
In
so
Door
they want
County, yeah.
to, yep, indoor county. So they want to raise money. They want to give ideas of what we can do to help us win. We I actually I've had several people join the party recently after the verdict to get involved because they're concerned, of course, they're upset, they
Yeah.
want to do something. And so I do feel that motivation, I do feel that intensity and that concern that is really, I think, driving people to get involved. So for whatever the obviously it's not a good thing what happened with the
Right.
with the trial, and I think it was very unfair and unjust.
Hmm.
But it has motivated people, I think, to say, we've had enough of this, and so that gives me hope because more people are getting engaged, wanting to help, and we just need on the ground we need everybody on the ground to do their part and to fight together to win. So that I mean, I do have hope. I feel that energy and that passion, and
Yeah.
so I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we deliver the win for Trump and for the
And
Senate too.
absolutely. And, it's, you mentioned the role of money in politics, right? I mean,
Mhm.
fundraising is a big part of,
Yep.
just campaigning, but it's also those, door to door contact, just
Yep.
distributing flyers, going to parades, and,
Hmm.
having booths at different events, and just,
Yes.
meeting people, shaking hands. Those are so important, the ground game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, we can always use people who are willing to uh, yeah, like you said, whether it's parades or knocking on doors, making phone calls, um,
Yeah.
just helping out with events. And there's just many different ways. I was talking to somebody this morning. I was meeting with somebody this morning
Hmm.
about social media and ads and stuff. And there's just all these different ways that people can help out, and it's all important. And absolutely, I mean, I know like person to person contact is incredibly important, and talking to people, even just it doesn't have to be knocking on a random door, although we do that as well. But just talking to people who you think, there's people out there that we want to get to vote who don't prioritize voting, but they think like us, and maybe
Hmm.
they just for whatever reason haven't made it a priority, don't think it matters, whatever. So we've got to just convince those people as well to show up, and we just need their vote. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So, um,
Oh,
in
Pam,
20,
real quick, I see Pamela says, "I'm sorry, who is this lady tossing?"
oh, I'm looking. So as I'm talking, I try to do my best to monitor the chat window. So Pamela Hernandez is from
Okay.
California. Pamela, correct me if I'm wrong. And Pamela tunes in for my live streams a lot, and we appreciate having Pamela here. So Pamela is asking. I think Pamela, you may have joined after we already started. So Stephanie is Republican Party of Wisconsin's vice chair for the 8th Congressional District and the chair of Door County Republican Party, and a good friend. And we're very happy to have Stephanie here talking about the 8th Congressional District, which is a very important district in Wisconsin as we head towards the 2024 election. And we're talking about, current affairs, what's happening, and projections for the future. So we're discussing politics. So that's an overview for Pamela. Do you want
Thanks
to
for
add
joining
anything?
us, Pamela.
See, it's always so wonderful since I started this channel, and I started doing live streams, I think, in January, and I
Okay.
didn't know what the response would be, but I kept seeing that I'm getting viewers from so many different states and a lot of
Yeah,
border
that's
states
interesting.
too, Texas, New Mexico, California, and I see
Interesting.
there are a lot of like-minded, conservatives, freedom-loving Americans out there who somehow found my channel, and I
Awesome.
appreciate the fact that they come in and view the videos and live streams. So
Yeah, that's
uh,
great.
thanks for joining, Pamela.
So I didn't mean to
Uh,
cut. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought, oh, I'll just make sure. I didn't know if you were seeing her comments. So
okay, yeah, I missed that, but then after you mentioned, I saw that.
perfect.
Um, okay, so in 2020, Trump won the 8th Congressional District by 16 percentage points.
Okay.
Um, And I think we can say that it's a safe Republican district. And you mentioned that, although you highlighted that we shouldn't take anything for
Hmm.
granted.
Right.
So, what's your prediction for 2024? Will Trump win the 8th congressional district by a larger margin this time? Do you think that's possible?
Well, I think it's possible. I think we need to. I mean, and
Hmm.
it's every part of the state probably says the same thing. Like we need Madison. I mean, we need Dane County
Yeah.
to increase the percentage of you guys aren't going to win Dane County, obviously, but just increase how much of the vote you get. Same with Milwaukee County.
Yeah.
But Northeast Wisconsin, certainly we have an important role to play. And I do think number one with and I won't go off into too much onto this, but like
Hmm.
we really have improved in some areas with election integrity. So
Hmm.
it was a big mess in 2020. Democrats took advantage of a lot of things with COVID, and we learned a lot. We've tried to undo some of those things and try to remedy some of those things.
Hmm.
We've got a lot of people on the ground, not only being a poll worker where you're working at the polls, but also election observers that a lot more. We've a bigger army of people on the ground, not only working the polls, but being election observers, being
Hmm.
trained. And so I think that's an important part of it in order to
Exactly.
help us win. So there's that part. Then we're also focusing on early voting and getting people who maybe don't vote as often, or maybe they haven't voted, but trying to convince them to vote and making it easier for them to vote because we have to compete with Democrats on early vote because the Democrats make it so easy with the mail in ballots and with just
Hmm.
practically putting
Hmm.
in their hand and taking it from them. And we want to follow the laws, of course, but if it's legal, then our our stance is we've got to do it and compete with them on that. So we're trying to get those people, make it easier for those people who may not vote otherwise to vote. And I think if we can compete with them on the early vote, that will certainly help us increase the percentage and help us win.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I understand that a lot of people want to vote on election day, and I get it. I
Sure.
also like to do that,
Yep.
but I have voted early. I have voted on election day, and November in Wisconsin, you never know what the weather's going to be, right?
Mhm.
On election day. So, and
It-
what other things may come up in life. There may be
yes.
something urgent coming up in your personal life. So it's important to vote early if you can.
I actually got in 2020, I literally got COVID like I think it was 5 days before the election. Or I
Mm,
started getting sick. I didn't know what it was at first, but then I could tell. I go, okay, I think this is COVID. And I got tested and it was, and sure enough, it knocked me out pretty bad. I haven't gotten COVID since, thankfully. But you know, that I there's no way I was gonna be able to, vote. And I couldn't work the election either, which I wanted to, but I obviously I
mhm.
wasn't going to. So those things can happen. The people who don't typically vote, they may or may not vote. That's like me, for me, it's on my mind. Like I'm most likely not going to forget. but we're human, so we can forget. But those people who definitely like are less likely to vote, that's why we want to get their vote in the bank. We want to get it taken care of because it's not a priority necessarily to them. But if we know they think like us and believe like us, we just want to get it taken care of. So there's no possibility that something else could come up and stop them from voting on election day. So
Exactly. Exactly. Now I'm going to talk about something that you briefly mentioned, the Senate race, right? The U.S. Senate race in Wisconsin. Oh, by the way, I'm seeing some comments, so thank you for joining. Katie is here. Katie, thank you for joining. And Pamela is writing, Trump has a beautiful heart. I think we can agree on that. Thank you. Thanks to the viewers for your comments. And if anyone has any question, I welcome people to ask that. Okay, so the U.S. Senate race, a very important one.
mhm.
Eric Hovde is the GOP candidate for U.S. Senate, Republican candidate, and Wisconsin Republicans have endorsed him. And to win the majority in the U.S. Senate, I think it's extremely important for Republicans to win the Senate race in Wisconsin. So, what are your thoughts about the Senate race? Can Eric Hovde win? And do you think the Republicans were going to be able to defeat Tammy Baldwin this time?
Well, I think it's going to be somewhat tough. I mean, I don't want to like sugarcoat it because she is an incumbent. However, um, she, by if we tie her to Joe Biden, who is has very negative poll numbers. He's not popular. She's voted with him like 95% of the time. So she pretends she comes around every 6 years to like talk about how she talks about farms and manufacturing and makes it sound like she's, a moderate. And so she is definitely, sorry, my son is, honey, not right now. My son is trying to talk to me. Um,
Yeah.
so she, so she's definitely like going to be a challenge because we need to expose her for like the way she's voted in the past because she does not have a moderate voting record. She's very, very liberal, very,
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, I guess I'd say radical in some ways. So she, I think Eric Hovde's doing a good job of being going on offense in some areas. Some of it is like they're just going to keep those negative attacks, like they're going to spin stuff he might say because they're doing that with the nursing home, which he's got to make sure to be on top of, responding, of course. But he was talking about those comments about like people in nursing homes and something about like not voting or like they made it sound like he was disparaging, older people as
Yeah.
far as like not, being aware of things and how to vote. Well, he was talking about them being taken advantage of by Democrat operatives
Mm-hmm.
and when they are not cognitive enough to, if they've had dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that. So that's what he was referring to. But so they're going to do that. They're going to try to spin stuff. So the campaign definitely has to do a good job of refuting those things when they spin. But I think there's a good opportunity here because the country, I mean, there's a lot of issues where she's been on the wrong side of those issues. The border, the spending, the she sides with them on a lot of the LGBTQ, the transgender, competing in girls, boys, biological boys competing in girls sports, and a lot of those things that the mainstream do not support. So I think there's an opportunity. And again, because when someone's an incumbent, it's a little bit harder to beat them, but I think we've got a shot at it. And so we just have to, I mean, we've got to do our part in Wisconsin. There's so much focus. I mean, there's a lot of pressure in Wisconsin because it's kind of like ground zero for whatever direction we're going to go as a country. Like, and there's other important states, obviously. Everybody's got a role to play, but there's like 5 to 7 states that it's going to come down to, and we're included in those states. So no pressure.
Exactly. Yeah. And you mentioned a very important point, and I've been involved in politics for many years now here in Wisconsin, and I've seen this happen. You say a paragraph, and somebody is going to take a part of a sentence out of that paragraph and twist the meaning and make it something that you didn't mean.
Yep,
I mean, the message. It's just it's sad to
it
see when
is.
people do that. I think, um,
It's
but
frustrating.
we have a lot of honest leaders on our side. Really people who are working hard for the people of Wisconsin, for the people of this country. And
Hmm.
on the left, you see so much of dishonesty and misinformation, and what they do when they take a part of a
They
sentence
do
out
it.
of a paragraph.
They do it with Trump a lot. So he
Yeah,
might say something that there are times I might not agree with him on something, but he has been taken out of context so often, and sometimes they just flat out make stuff up about the comment about Milwaukee. Um, of course, there were no cameras or anything that like recorded anything, but several Republicans came out and said that's not what he said. He was talking about Milwaukee being terrible on crime and election integrity. I mean, he wasn't calling it a terrible city overall. So
yeah,
again, they'll take whatever they can and try to spin it. So we just have to be ready and prepared for like whatever they're going to try to spin and fight back against that narrative.
yeah. And what ends up happening, even when you respond and you fight back, but by then, those twisted comments are already viral on
Yep.
social media. So
Yep.
it's a constant fight, I think. Um, but something that we have to pay attention to when the left is twisting, our words, we have to fight back, and we
Yep.
have to highlight the truth. So,
Amen.
um, I'm very hopeful regarding the Senate race, but once again, you can't take anything for granted. The incumbent does have an advantage, but then once again, look at the incumbent's records. Look at Tammy
Hmm.
Baldwin's record,
Yep.
and
She's got
so
a she's got a record that we can, that's the good thing about somebody being in office for a while. You can point to all the things they voted for that you believe that people would disagree with, and so if you
yeah,
highlight those things, and so that's going to be key is just pointing out those things she's voted for that we believe the voters will not approve of.
yeah, yeah, and I'm looking forward to Eric Hovde winning. So
Amen. Me
let's hope.
too.
We got to work hard.
Yes.
um, so Wisconsin is a battleground state. We already talked about it, and um, many Republicans say that Trump has to win Wisconsin in order to win the presidential election. Um, do you think that Trump can win Wisconsin in 2024? Let's go into that.
I 100% believe he can win it. I really do. I really do. I'm not just saying that to sound, like, um, Pollyannish. I think like when I see like in the Bronx when he had
Hmm.
that rally, and then he goes to Detroit recently, he's reaching
Hmm.
those people that are they're just like, how long have we voted for Democrats for? It seems like they're starting to wake up more, and they're starting to see.
Definitely.
Wait a second, like there are we really getting something out of when we vote for Democrats? They look at the conditions of their city, whether it's the crime or the or immigration. Illegal immigrants coming and taking stuff from where like they look at their neighborhoods and they're like, wait, our taxes are paying for people who aren't even citizens, but yet what if look at the conditions of our city. And they also see, um, the economic side of things, and they're feeling it. That
Hmm.
I there was a interview. Actually, our chairman Brian Schimming, our state party chairman Brian Schimming, was on CNN the other day with Wolf Blitzer, and Wolf Blitzer was trying to make it sound like, you know, well, this is the crime about the crime. And he's like, well, actually, crime statistics are going down. And so why do you think that people, why would you use the message about, crime going up or whatever? And he's like, but that's not what people are feeling or experiencing. Like he goes, you can give all the stats in the world. So you can try to claim um, that inflation is actually it's getting better. Well, I don't feel that. When I go to the grocery store, when I buy
No.
a used car or pay the electric bill or whatever,
Hmm.
it's like we see with our eyes what's going on and we experience it. So that's where we've got to make sure people understand, like, these policies from the Democrats are what is causing a lot of these problems. It's causing a lot of difficulties for families and for our nation in general, with the open border. You've got World War III on the brink. Where I mean,
Hmm.
we're there's a lot of instability right now, and
Exactly.
the Democrats are the ones who are in charge of a lot of things right now. so,
Yeah.
so just look at the reality of things is basically what
Yeah.
we need to do.
And, on my channel, I always talk about, sometimes I feel like I'm just repeating over and over again because, people are feeling that every day when you go to the
Mhm.
grocery store, when you're buying gas. Gas used to be, I think 2019, it was under $2. Um,
Yep,
and when Biden came to office here in Wisconsin, we did reach $5, if you remember that.
I do
We did.
remember.
I remember that day when, I saw the news that there was some gas station, I think, um, where the price was $5 per gallon, and I know in California it went over $7. So
In
when you look at
Pamela,
all
what is
that,
it at now? I'm curious what it is in California.
I don't know. I think it obviously does vary. I wonder what the gas prices in San Francisco is right now.
I know
Yeah.
taxes. I mean, it's funny because, when I feel like all we have to do is point to California and be like, the Democrats are in charge of so much of California, and what are the results? Look at the homelessness. In fact, I think there are some Silicon Valley. There are some people. I think there's some. There was a woman the other day who had voted for. I believe she voted for Biden, and she's a wealthy. I think she's a billionaire, but she is going to be voting for Trump this time.
Okay.
And she's from in California, and she was
Hmm.
explaining just all the issues with whether it's homelessness or drugs or just the conditions of these cities. And so it's interesting. I mean, that gives me hope too, just seeing people. There are people who are waking up. I like people like Elon Musk, who it's very possible I don't agree with him on several things. He's probably more liberal. I know he is. He's a little more liberal than me on some things. However, he has common sense. He is being fair about free speech on his, when he purchased Twitter. That's a huge deal that we don't have to be concerned about Twitter censoring conservatives this time around.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that's a plus. So I like seeing people I'm encouraged by seeing people wake up, start to question things. And COVID, there's a lot of things being exposed about how that was handled. There's just a
Yeah.
lot of stuff coming out. So we, of course, want to see justice. But the first thing that needs to happen is for people to find out the truth, awaken to the truth, and then we hope they vote accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm seeing that Pamela wrote, because Pamela is from California. She's writing between $5 and $7. Okay, so she's referring to gas prices in
Okay.
California.
Okay.
Uh, it's just shocking. People are paying $5, $6, $7 per gallon for gas. And when Trump was in office, we had energy independence. Now we don't.
Yes.
Um,
That's another big thing that I think it gets lost a little bit because there are really big issues going on besides that. But
mhm.
that is all tied into the economy too, and inflation, because energy costs affect everything. I mean, you think about all the shipping that has to go on with products, and just how we all drive every day. I mean, I think the left, the Democrat Party, wants us to be more. Like in Europe, they have a lot of public transportation, and
Yeah.
it's almost like they don't want us to have the freedom to have a car where we can go wherever we want when we want. And that
Mhm.
so the whole climate change thing is about control. And so we were in energy independent under Trump, and now we're not. And that's just one more thing that we can point to, and people are feeling it.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
when it's real to the when it's personal to people, where they're experiencing it versus just their neighbor. I think Reagan said something about that, how a recession is when your neighbor's experiencing hardship. A depression is when you're experiencing. Not that we're going through depression right now, but just the point is, when you're feeling it, then you pay more attention to things.
Exactly.
So
And
that's what.
I just have to highlight one thing because we talked about energy.
Mhm,
um, the Democrats, and I think I mentioned this with regard to immigration at the Lincoln Day dinner,
mhm,
how the Democrats they use these terms, like instead of apprehension at the border, they call it encounter, and instead of illegal immigrant, now the Democrats call them newcomers. And in energy, we see the same thing. The Democrats say green energy, and green is supposed to be
yeah,
something nice and refreshing and
yeah,
friendly, but it's not. When you look at the economics, this
right,
this green energy doesn't work.
right. And
We are a fossil fuel dependent country. Yeah.
yeah, and it's also, we can't base things on, uh, we have to be realistic about what's available to us, what's feasible, what's economical and affordable and available. And there are other forms of cleaner energy that, number one, we're either using already, or we are, like nuclear is something that, you
Hmm.
know, I think could be really good if, we have, if we go more towards that. So I think there's a lot of, hyperbolic rhetoric and fear mongering about the planet, the world ending if we don't get off of, fossil fuels right now. And, what's interesting is fossil fuels are, it's from nature, like, natural, it's from our natural resources, natural gas. I mean,
Exactly.
so, hello, it's natural. So,
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, so that's just one more tactic of the left. They use language a lot. They twist language. Uh, they change the meaning of things.
Hmm.
Like, they don't even know what a woman is, or how to describe what a woman is. And
Hmm.
so, their goal is to change language, to change our history, to teach revisionist history. And, if they can convince people that our history is something that it wasn't, then they can change the future, in a way that we don't want. Because our country was founded on good things, on good principles. And, uh, the principles in the Constitution are timeless. They shouldn't shift and change with, they don't, they're, I see them as truths, like that we are born with rights that are given to us by God. And so, but they believe the Constitution is a living, breathing document that just should change with the times.
Hmm.
And I don't agree with that. So we need, I think the long term, for winning, we need to win in the short term. Obviously, for this election, we have to win. But long term, whether it's our schools, our colleges, our culture,
Hmm.
entertainment, there's a lot
Hmm.
of things that we need to educate people on long
Exactly.
term. And, so that's got to be, we've got to take some of those institutions back. And I think, I think we're seeing that a little bit more with people getting engaged in the school system, whatever is being taught in schools. There's parents that are involving themselves more. We are seeing more of a culture. I think some more people on our side are getting involved and pushing back on the culture issues. And, I think the other side's pushing too far. And so
Hmm.
that's a good thing, I think, about some of this stuff. It's kind of going crazy, but sometimes, the other side might be overplaying their hand. And so
Yeah.
I think that can bode well for us if we handle it right.
Yeah. So, the next question that I'm going to ask you is once again about Donald Trump. There are some Republicans who don't support Trump. Republicans, they consider themselves Republicans. They don't support Trump, and
Hmm.
we've seen that. I think, being involved in politics, I think you and I, we both have met people right
Hmm.
here in our state
Yep.
who vote for Republicans for state assembly, state senate, other races, but when it comes to the top of the ticket, they don't support Trump. Now, I personally support Trump, and I've always supported him, and I believe that we should be united in supporting Trump so that we
Hmm.
can win the White House. But I want to ask you, what do you say to those voters who are ready to vote for Republican candidates for state assembly, state senate, and congressional and senate races, but they don't want to vote for Trump for whatever reason. What's your message to those
Sure.
voters?
Well, I have had this discussion a few times with people already. So, what I would say is there's a few things. One, I truly believe that this is about America surviving. So,
Hmm.
if I really think um, if you write down on paper the policies that you support, and then you write down on paper the things that Trump did as president or the things he says he's going to do on those policies, and you ignore the person, like a personality or things he says, you just make it about policy and how those policies, open borders, affect people's lives personally. Drugs, crime,
Hmm.
human trafficking, children and women being trafficked
Hmm.
because of open border policies. That right there is enough for me to vote for Trump. That's all I need. No, I shouldn't say it's all I need, but that's a big one. Um, there's a lot of things that affect people's lives that policies policies matter, and who's in charge matters. If
Exactly.
you don't, and the other thing is, if you don't want to see conservatives targeted by the Department of Justice, by the FBI, by the CIA, by the IRS, all those ABC agencies, if you don't want to see unfair, unjust treatment by
Hmm.
those institutions, by those government entities,
Hmm.
you want to vote for Trump because he's not going to abuse. There was no examples in it for all the people calling him saying he's going to be a dictator. There's absolutely, I can't think of anywhere in his first presidency when he was first president that he operated that way.
Hmm.
He's not the one using the government to go after. He never used the government to go after journalists. This administration has, and even the Obama administration did. So we just have to look at reality. We have to look, number one, with what's at stake. I'm doing this a lot for my son, for future generations,
Hmm.
because I love my son. I want him and other generations that come after me to have freedom and to not live in a country that resembles China or a third world country. Um, and it's, yeah, sure it's about the economy, but honestly there's a lot more to it than just that. So I would just implore people to please just put aside, if you don't like something he says, just, you really got to look at, put on paper, what do I agree with in policy,
Hmm.
and leave it at that. And he's not the things that here's the other thing. He is not the things that the left claims he is, because they'll say, oh, um, you know, January 6th, it was an insurrection. I could, we could go a whole hour on that. I'm not going to, but he's racist. He's, all these things that have been totally twisted on him. There's a
Hmm.
lot of things that have been twisted. He never called neo-Nazis fine people. There's video proof that he said, I'm actually not, and I'm just so you know, I'm not referring to neo-Nazis as fine people. He was talking about the debate about the statues, whether or not we should take statues down. People on both sides of that argument. I could go on and on. He's not what the left is making him out to be. So he may be crass and say stuff that I don't always agree with, but he's not the caricature or the the dictator or whatever they want to call him that the left wants to make him out to be. So I could go on, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I've heard from other Republicans um, who said that, oh, Trump should just stop, tweeting. Well, it's no longer Twitter now; it's called X. But
Right.
that's the
Posting on
app I'm
X.
referring to. Like, oh, why is he always tweeting? Why is he always doing that? Well, I just tell people, um, do you want a president who communicates directly with the public, or do you want somebody who doesn't communicate? All you see is the press secretary, and then the president sits down for an interview, which is pre-recorded, it's edited, and then it's published. Or do you want
Mhm.
somebody who's reacting in real time? When you have Trump in the White House, um, obviously presidents have communications team, but this president, our former president, communicated directly with the public. So, something happened in the country, some news broke, and you could go on Twitter at the time, now it's X, you could go and see in real time what the president is saying, how he's
Yep.
reacting. So do you want a president who communicates directly with the public? And you may disagree with what he says, or you may agree with him, but at least he's interacting directly. He's communicating directly with the public in real time, rather than our current president who's not talking to the media much.
Well, he can't probably, I mean, he's probably not cognitive enough that they've got to hide him away probably more often than not because he usually seems to be a little lost when he's wherever he is. So I think, he's Trump is much more competent than Biden. I would say that. And also, here's the thing. There's a lot of politicians out there who look one way in public, they talk one way in public, but they talk and behave exactly like Trump does in behind closed doors or to people, and when they're talking to people in private. They'll have a crude mouth, they'll say the most awful things, but it's just not publicly. So they're pretending. You've got pretenders who are politicians, and then you just have Trump where he just tells it like it is, or he says his opinion and you may disagree, but he's real, and he just and again, I don't always agree with everything, and sometimes I go, oh, don't say that, but I don't think he's fake. I think he's
He's
real, at
real.
least.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of people out there that they're very polished and they look so good, but they're
Hmm.
not what they're pretending to be. So,
Yeah.
I would say that as well.
So those are all important things for people to remember as we head towards the election, especially the Republicans who, for whatever reason, don't want to support Trump. Please think about the country. Think about what's at stake, and what Stephanie said, that you write down the policies that you like, and you write down all the things that Trump did, and just do a compare. And I think
Mhm.
then you'll know the reason why it's important to vote for Trump. So I
Amen.
appreciate that very much. So thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Um, we are reaching almost towards the end of this live stream, but I have an interesting question, which something that we are all thinking about, I think, right now. Who's going to be the VP? Right? We will probably find out in a couple weeks. So Americans are wondering who Trump is going to pick for VP, and many names have been discussed. Would you like to make a prediction about that, or can you tell us if you have a favorite political figure for the VP position? If Trump called you and asked for your recommendation, who would you? What would you say?
Oh my goodness. This is actually one of those issues where I can't say. I don't know if I can predict. I really am not sure who he's going to pick because I've heard different things, and I don't know what's true and what's not. I mean, I've heard like he's narrowed it down. I've
Hmm.
heard Vivek how do you say his name? Ramaswamy?
Ramaswamy, yeah,
Ramaswamy,
yeah.
Vivek. I've heard Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott. I've heard, and I don't think this will happen, but
JD Vance,
what's
JD
that?
Vance,
Oh,
JD
JD
Vance, I
Vance. Yep.
think. Doug Burgum, yeah.
Doug Burgum, and actually Doug Burgum's going to be, I think he's going to be in Green Bay tomorrow for a
Oh,
fundraiser for Tony Weed, actually. So
okay.
he'll be in our area. Um, and I've heard and there's different reasons for. Tulsi Gabbard was another one. Although Tulsi, see, she's independent. I mean, I don't see him picking her, and I personally, actually, I like her. I just don't personally know if I would want her because as the VP, because she's in a transition period right now where I don't know, like, I'm excited that she's left the
Hmm.
Democrat Party. She's, waking up to some things. So there's probably enough issues I wouldn't agree with her on yet. But her name was floated, or people have suggested, I should say. So I think, I mean, I guess I might ask your opinion actually. So because I would think Trump would want somebody who adds to the ticket. And is it somebody who, you know, is it because of what state they come from? Is it like, Doug Burgum is kind of uh, a more mellowed version of Trump in a sense of, he's a businessman. Um, I liked what he had to say. He wasn't the most exciting person when he was running for president, but I did like what he had to say. So he's, maybe more the toned down balance that, he could use, but
Mhm,
I liked Tim Scott too. I've always liked him. He's got a really intriguing story,
mhm,
how he came from poverty and from a family that he had to work really hard to get where he is. And yeah, he's a black man that he kind of defies what the Democrats claim about black people. Black people can be successful in this country, and and so I think he's got a great story to tell. I think he um, again in some ways brings a balance to Trump, but I've heard people say Vivek because he's got a lot of energy. He can bring a lot of energy to the ticket, but Trump already has the energy, I feel like. But he certainly has, he's a younger guy. He excites young people, I think. So, those are kind of the different things I see about some of those candidates or potential candidates rather. So,
mhm.
I don't know if you have thoughts. Do you have thoughts?
I have been talking about this over the last few months. I've been discussing different names as names have been discussed in the media.
Hmm.
And recently I saw Glenn Youngkin's name come up,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
which is very interesting because
Yeah,
Glenn
that's
Youngkin,
interesting.
being a Republican, he won Virginia. So
Hmm.
if he's on the ticket, is there a possibility that Trump could win Virginia? You
Oh,
know,
that's interesting. Yeah.
that would be interesting. Tim Scott is wonderful. I've always liked him. And I feel that Tim Scott and Trump, obviously based on, like, I have not met Tim Scott, so, but based on my observation and, the reports I'm seeing and, the different statements that come out, it seems that he has good working relationship with Trump, Tim Scott. I
Hmm.
think they'll get along well.
Yeah, I
Um,
think
Tim
so
Scott
too.
has a cheerful personality whenever you see him on
That's
stage.
why I like him so much.
Yeah, I really like Tim Scott. And, Doug Burgum, um, when he was on stage in Milwaukee during the Republican
Mhm.
debate, I was not able to attend that, but I was watching from home, and I liked how he kept his answers brief and to the point.
Yeah.
That's a very important skill, I think,
Yes, in politics
because
it is.
it is because on stage I understand that people are competing for time. Someone's answering and somebody else jumps in, and who gets more time to speak versus. So there's always that competition on the debate stage.
Yeah,
But what Doug Burgum did, I think, was he answered. It was short, but it was very powerful. I forget what topic it was, but I remember drawing that conclusion about him on
sure.
stage. So I
And he
don't.
kept it to the I think he kept it on topic where he didn't, he wasn't I didn't feel like he was trying to dramatize anything. And I
No.
just felt like, okay, I like he's just straight to the point and I like
Yeah.
that.
And then again, the other thing is like, do you want, sometimes people wonder like, okay, do you want a House member, a U.S. senator, or do you want a governor?
Sure.
Who do you want on your ticket?
Because
Well,
if
with
they
Mike,
take or go ahead. Go ahead.
with Mike Pence, there was both.
Mhm.
Obviously, Pence and Trump are no longer the
Yeah.
greatest friends, but
Yeah.
Pence had both. He had the governor experience, and he also served in Congress, so he had that.
Hmm.
So that also I think is something that is important to take into consideration. Um,
Sure. Someone's background and experience.
yeah, I mean, do you want somebody who served in the executive branch of a state, or do you want somebody who served in Congress? Um,
Sure. There's an
uh,
interesting, good things and there's upside to both, I think, because although Trump has been in office now, he has been in DC for, he was there for 4 years, so he kind of saw the ins and outs of things, and
yeah,
because you think, oh, you'd want somebody maybe who has been in Congress and legislated that way and seen a lot of the stuff that could be a help to navigate some things for Trump.
Hmm.
Although, but again, he's been in office already for 4 years. He's probably seen a lot more than he expected to see. He probably
Yeah.
expected to see some of it, but yeah, I think that there's obviously as a governor, that person, as far as taking over as president, um, if they had to, um, I would feel pretty confident with somebody who's been governor because they've been in a similar position at a different level, running a state. So,
Exactly. One of the things that I've discussed previously on this channel on some of my solo live streams is that I saw on election night, when we had the presidential preference vote here in Wisconsin, there were tens of thousands of Haley votes, Nikki Haley votes.
mhm,
And, my concern is that, I mean, I'm guessing those are individuals who are the never Trumpers. And I want somebody to be on the ticket with Trump who can attract those votes. I want
mhm,
like people who thought they're going to vote for Haley, they're not going to vote for Trump. I want somebody as VP who the Haley voters can look at and say, you know what, Trump may not be the favorite, for them, but
sure,
that VP candidate is good. We're going to vote for the ticket. So,
sure,
who's that going to be? Who can draw more suburban women voters? I think that's a group that we talk about quite a bit. The
yep,
suburban women
yep,
votes. Yeah.
yeah. I think actually, as you're talking, I mean, I feel like, either, I feel like Tim Scott, or I think, even Doug Burgum. I mean, I think somebody who's a little more mellow and is a likable person that,
Hmm.
and I've never voted for anybody just because they're a likable person, but other people do. I think it can maybe draw some people in a little bit more, and kind of soften. I mean, I remember people saying, now I'm disappointed with Mike Pence on some things, but back in 20, or probably 2020 as well, but 2016, there are people I know who voted for Trump who said they were voting for Mike Pence, really, like,
Hmm.
because he was on the ticket. So I do think there's something to be said about that, that it can make a difference. So yeah, so I don't know, I don't have like a favorite, like I really hope it's this person, but I think there's some good options. And
Yeah.
we didn't talk about any. Did we talk about any women candidates? I don't know.
I,
Did we?
I, I was gonna mention a few more names because I'm reading
Yeah.
some comments here too. Pamela is writing Ben Carson.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
there's
Yeah.
Sheriff of YouTube who's writing Tucker Carlson. But then I was going to mention Christy Nome,
Oh,
who
okay.
recently came and spoke, I think, in Wausau, right, in Marathon
Yeah. Were
County.
you there?
I was not there.
Okay,
I,
I
I
wasn't
was
there
not
either.
at that.
So.
I missed that event. But any thoughts about Christy Nome or Tucker or Ben Carson?
Yeah, I think so. With Kristi Noem, I mean, I think she was a great candidate or a great possibility. I mean, I'm not sure because of her biography. People are making it seem like the whole dog thing, like the comment about in her book. Some people think some people were really upset at her for that, which I don't know. I think it was unwise for her to write about it just because of how people would take it. It wouldn't disqualify her for me, but there's people who are just like, oh my gosh, I could just never, vote for her. So I don't know. I'm like, I think she initially would have been like a great potential candidate.
Hmm.
I just don't know if that has like ruined anything for her or not, for her chances of that. Ben Carson, I actually liked Ben Carson in 2016. He was one of my favorites.
He's great.
During, yeah, that's the type of, I mean, like just the same thing like with Tim Scott, like that tends to be my style, or like what I gravitate towards in a candidate is I like somebody who's really just um not bombastic or over the top about things, is really down to earth, likable. Now, having said that, I love Trump, I do. But just the type of like I that's just always who I gravitate towards if there's a primary, I like people who are just down to earth, and I'm just very diplomatic too. I tend to be pretty diplomatic. I can be fiery if I need to, but I'm a more diplomatic person. Who was the other name you mentioned?
Tucker Carlson.
Oh,
Somebody
Tucker
mentioned
Carlson.
that.
I
Sheriff
don't
of
think he
YouTube
would.
mentioned that.
Yeah, I don't think he would want it. I don't think he is even contemplating that. I think. I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he's a little more libertarian than, I mean, he's definitely conservative, but I think he's a little more libertarian than I am. But he's certainly, I do appreciate that he is bold and willing to say things that, I mean, you look at like when he left Fox News, like he was willing to say certain things, risking that
Mhm.
he could be, they could get rid of him. So I think, he's got certain things to like about, I just don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think that's a possibility, but
Okay.
it's an interesting thought though.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I have one other name that Terry Dunlap just mentioned. Terry, as I mentioned, used to live in Greene County, and now Terry moved to South Dakota. Terry is writing Sarah Huckabee, Sarah Huckabee
oh,
Sanders,
that's a good, I like her. I know, did she just become governor? Like,
Arkansas. I don't know what year. I could look it up, but
was it, I feel like it was 2023
I think
because
2022. Yes, she became. I think 2023.
was like the
Um,
start of her, like she got
right.
elected in
So it's
2022,
her.
but then,
It's
yeah.
her first term. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's um, I think the idea of it is great. I don't know because she just became governor, a couple years ago. I don't know if she'd want to leave her term, how that would go. I don't know. Unfortunately, she's in a position where she might want to finish that out. But I do like her. She's a fighter. She's a woman. She's assertive. She's not afraid to. I mean, she was great as
Press
the press
secretary.
secretary. Yeah, I
Yeah.
loved having her as press secretary. So and she's doing good things in Arkansas. So I'm sure they would want to keep her there.
Yeah.
But I do like her though. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, she's great. And so we just have to wait and see. Now,
yep.
Stephanie, are you going to the national convention?
I am. I'm so excited. So I got
Do you want to
elected.
talk about it a little bit?
Yeah,
Just
I
share
can talk about
something with the
that.
viewers? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'm super excited. I got elected at my district caucus because that's so how it works is the top three vote getters in your district are
Mm-hmm.
the delegates. The next three vote getters are the alternates, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's three of each from all the districts. So yeah, I got elected as a delegate. Super excited, and that is going to be just an amazing experience being a part of history, being there with people from all parts of the country, every state and six territories, and the media. I mean, I was told there's going to be like, I don't know, tens of thousands of media there. So it's crazy. I don't know, it's all over the world. It's just going to be all
Exactly.
eyes on Milwaukee, all eyes on Wisconsin. And I actually had a local reporter reach out from Fox 11, my local news station in Green Bay, and they said, hey, like just wondering if you want to talk, either leading up to the convention or at the convention and just get your perspective on things. Feel free to
Yeah,
reach out if you see anything or want to talk about anything. So I'm excited to just share like my thoughts on things and my perspective and just how important it is that we win in Wisconsin and just elect Republicans up and down the ballot.
exactly. Exactly. That is very exciting. And, I wish you all the best. RNC,
Thank
it's
you.
going to be so exciting time.
It
It's
is.
coming up soon.
Yep.
So all eyes on Milwaukee, not just the eyes of the country, but the eyes of the world
Yes.
on Milwaukee. So
Be pretty
uh,
pretty intense in
it
a good
will
way.
be. Yes, absolutely. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, talking about your background and how you got involved, and talking about the presidential race and the Senate race and Door County and the 8th Congressional District.
We
So,
talked about a lot.
yeah, we covered a lot, and I
It
know
was
there's
great.
so much more that we can easily go on for another hour. But
Yes.
you can always come back, and
Well,
maybe
I
after the
appreciate it.
RNC, you can come back and share your
Yeah,
experience at the RNC.
that'd be a lot
So,
of fun. So,
all
well, I
right.
appreciate you having me, Tassif, and I'd love to come on again.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks to all the viewers who tuned in. Thank you for watching and for all of your comments. Now, because I was so busy in the conversation, I couldn't read your comments, but, just I appreciate the fact that you are all staying engaged and you're sharing your thoughts and views. And Stephanie, thank you once again. And, we'll talk to you again soon. And
Okay.
thanks for
Sounds like
your
a plan.
time.
Thank you, Tassif. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.